idea. Okay, we also publish the same information about data sets in the ENDS Research.Australia, which is another metadata catalog. Now, this is much bigger than NCI, and in fact, all the organizations who are publishing the data set, like NCI or whatever university, then tend to transfer the record into this main catalog. ENDS is the Australian National Data Services, was instituted by the government, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, something like that, to provide data services for all the researchers, but also to make sure that all the data sets and the information about the kind of data that research was producing in Australia will be shared across everybody. So this is one of the reasons why we also publish on, our data in this one too. And that's the way it looks. It looks a little bit better. You get a little map. And the nice thing of this one is that, as well as having all the other things that the other one has, you can click here and go to the download the data. You get quite clearly information on how to cite the data set, and you can see straight on what kind of license has been applied to this one. But also you can see on the side, you'll notice there are other similar data sets which are actually coming out from the Center of Excellence too, obviously. And also there will be some information about the person who did it. So it's a bit nicer having a record in here. And while I say the NCI eventually will automatically load all this record in there, we did prefer to do our own, because then we can create, for example, better party records, so we can put better information on you guys, and then we can connect them to other data sets which you might have produced somewhere else if you tell us. And also, I guess this was the first way we could produce a metadata record and give you something you could give to a journal when NCI didn't have set up yet all these catalogs and stuff. So we keep on doing it because we think it gives you much more visibility in the end. Right. So has anyone got any question at the moment? It's all good. I'm coming a little bit. From the thing. Right. Oh, sorry. Software is also data from our point of view when we talk about data publishing, and this is one of the things that I always forget to tell people. And even from lots of the journals, they would like you to publish your code, if it's possible as well, that you use to produce your figures and things. And we would like for you to do that too. It's easy to share. You can put your stuff on GitHub. It doesn't have to be wonderful. Obviously, every time you share something, you might have to go for a little bit more preparation, but we're happy to help you. And we set up a CMS GitHub that people can contribute to, and I know people is already contributing. And actually, just going back, whoops, can't slide my thing properly. This record on ENDS that I showed before is actually about Eric Oliver marine heat waves detection code. So ENDS gonna come out, and there's a lot of talk and lots of committees and things on how to actually correctly publish your software. At the moment, we don't have a great way to do it, a dedicated way to do it. And obviously data is different from software, but currently ENDS allows you to publish them as a data set. Just on a different subcategory, and then eventually these all have slightly different, information and requirements. And so this one, for example, if you go to the data provider, will just send you straight to the GitHub. Just putting on GitHub, as I say, it's a good way to start. And also as CMS, we might provide something else, which is called Zenodo, which is more about software publishing. which will still connect eventually to the code on GitHub, but just handle all the information a little bit better in a more dedicated way. So where are the files in all this? We haven't yet gone down to what happened. Not ideal. I can't get back to the presentation mode, sorry, it's a bit complicated. So the files go on something called threads. I don't know if any of you, just to get an idea, I mean, I can't see the people in the other, has anyone ever used Opened Up or Threads? Anyone else apart from Jason now? So Threads just, it's another different kind of catalog online. It pretty much looks like a system of folders and files. So let's have a look at what you get. So this is, again, is from the NCI catalog of Threads. So where we have our own stuff. And if I go here, what you're going to find, this is just a licenses and video, you're going to find your netcdf files. It's mostly working for netcdf file, but for example, one of the data sets is just ASCII files, and you can still go in there and download it. But if you actually have netcdf, what you get is, as well as getting this HTTP service or a link to actually download the file, you can get lots of other different protocols. And probably the most important is this one, Opened Up. And Opened Up basically, well, when you look it on the web like this, it's just show you anything you have in the file, all the attributes and the different variables and things. But what happens if you go here and say that I click this one and actually selecting some of the variable. Now this is mostly, it's just the dimensions. So that we get that one. Now, if I look here, this is a URL for this particular file. And you can see that it's been adding all these constraints, which is exactly what I selected over there. And I could have changed and say, okay, I just want the first point rather than two, or a particular realization. Now you can use this URL. You don't go here and do all of this manually. Maybe you might do it once just to see what the URL looks like, or just to explore the data. What you normally do, either you're in MATLAB, Python, R, or whatever, you give them straight on this URL. So it's really great when you have a really big file and you want to get a subset, and you just say, I just want this variable, say from a model output, and I want maybe just this region. Once you work out what the index is for your region, you can just put that into a script and loop over these. And it's good because that's just the bit you're going to retrieve. So it's going to limit your download, and it gives you a lot of flexibility, especially when you have maybe a time series which is spread across, hundreds of files and things like that. You just put that into a loop and it's going to grab them for you. There's a lot of other things you can do. In fact, you can aggregate the files all together, and we're going to see later another example of that. And
will you show us how to do a script for the data across multiple files, or is that something? I'm not showing it in this thing, but we do have, and I think NCI's got a training. I can show you where the online training site is on NCI. And they do have a training that, for example, show you how to use Opened Up and things like that. So it's not complicated. Generally, if you can do it with netcdf, you can use kind of the same commands, or just maybe substitute the command. I can't remember what MATLAB uses because I haven't done for years, but we used to have load up. But I think now whatever open a netcdf file might open a URL like that in the same way. The other thing you can do is to use, for example, the netcdf subset service, which might take a little bit longer. I'm struggling to appear.
Sorry, I'm on my net with my Wi-Fi will be that fast. But just explain. So you will see again all the variable, the thing you have on your set. It should also appear as a map, and you should be able to. We'll see another example later. So this one is not loading. It's not a big issue. And you should be able to subset that and save it as actually a netcdf file. So that's handy, for example, when someone has underlined, aggregated all the data into a unique virtual data set, and then you can extract, say, a time series of just what you want from lots of files, and then actually save it as a netcdf file, if you prefer doing it that way. Right. Also comes with some viewer, which don't seem to be allowed in this NCI, and there are often other things. Let me see if there's actually one of the this particular data set. Yeah. So some of these, then there is the WMS and WCS. They mostly use the web map server and web coverage server. They're more used by GIS or Google Earth, that kind of sort of thing. And again, we don't have viewer, so we won't worry about it. So the kind of services you can use depends a lot on your kind of data set. If it's a grid, if it's a point data set. Clearly, if it's an ASCII, all you can do is just download the data. But it depends also on the attributes and how the data is described in the file, because if it's not properly described, this thing just won't work. Anyway, this is what NCI uses to put the data online. If you put it on NCI, you have to say it's going to be publicly available for everybody. We don't have a way to protect through password. You can do it, but it's difficult to do it data set by data set. So if you put it here, it's just public for everybody. If that doesn't suit you, we can discuss about other options. Going on. Okay. I think this should be already compelling, and sorry if I didn't give it justice, but I think it's pretty good when someone can go there online and download your data, and having a DOI, which is actually, you know, necessary for your thing, and having all these metadata records around in ENDS and RDA actually give you visibility and give visibility to your research. But if you're still wondering why bothering, because lots of people do, and I'm sure you're not one of these weak people, it's worth even just because that's often the last step. You've done a lot of work through your research. You got to manage the data in any case, which is mostly what you need to then get to publish, say. So it's just the last kind of little thing to do. We're here to help, and we're really interested in that as the center. And NCI wants you to publish. We want you to publish. ENDS wants you to publish. We all want to put more records. So it's actually much easier than someone might think. And if that's not good enough, well, it's just becoming a requirement. And so publishing data is becoming a requirement from the publisher, for journals, to have your papers published. And I had a few people just calling me like a couple of days before and said, oh, I really need to publish these. But also that DMPs, which stands for Data Management Plans, are becoming a requirement from the ARC. They want to make sure that you thought what you're going to do with your plans when you actually apply for a grant. So this is becoming more and more a requirement. And if it hasn't become yet, it's just because they can't say, oh, you had to do it until they provide very clear guidelines on how to do it and everything. But if you start now, you'll be way ahead. Every year I look at the requirements when you put down a grant, and this becomes, you know, we suggest you do this, we suggest you share your data, we strongly advise you to do it, and soon it'll become you have to. So it's better be ready.
So don't let any concern you might have stopping you. And this might seem silly, but maybe people won't ask here, but lots of people come out with concerns. Come to me and tell me, oh, but yeah, that sounds good. Most of the problems or the concern people have are actually completely fixable if the information you have to your data is clear. So that's the clue. And my favorite one is that my data is not that interesting. You'll be amazed how many people say, oh yeah, this sounds all great, but no one will ever use my data. And you really can't tell. You don't know until you put it out, until you talk about it. Plus, if people is interested in your research, potentially it's because they'll be interested in your data, even more in a way. And then the other one, which I'm quite amusing, is like, I'm worried that people will try to contact me. So apparently this is one of the main concerns the researcher raised as well. So we have, well, maybe they'll do, but if they want to collaborate. So, sorry, it's going bad. I should have canceled that. Yeah, so that's an example of what happened with maritime continent model experiment dataset, which I think we published probably about a couple of months ago, might be about wrong. So I don't know if that's for sure, just Claire told me that the other Claire told him. They actually have a very good response, and the data set is proven to be already quite reasonably used, and it's opening new possibility for collaboration for his team. So if someone will try to contact you and you actually put good information in your data set, it's probably just because they really want to use it, and they might even want to go further. So it's not that terrible. So which data do we publish? How do we choose? Well, you should provide all the information that is needed to interpret or reuse and reproduce your results. So that's ideally, especially what journals would like you to do. This is not always completely possible, and this is also where the software and the code you use comes into play, and that's what we look at as part of data. But the best you can do is still pretty good, I'll say. And if the output is big, you don't need to publish all of it. You might just need to publish a slice. So often people come and say, oh, I have all this big model output. There are some situations in which, might be important to publish all of that, but mostly what you publish, for example, is a post-process part. Maybe the journal is just interested in the couple of variables you've been using. Although still take into account that some other people might be interested in bits and pieces you haven't used if you've been running a model. So it might still be worth to publish more than what you actually use. But that doesn't mean, it quite never means the raw output, which is often hard to use, but it will always be some post-process part. In any case, if you can't publish everything, you can still publish the information about the data. So even if that data then still exists on tape rather than on threads, if you put enough information and the right contact, that person can still, a person who's interested, can still know that that exists somewhere and contact one of us, and we'll make sure, find a way for these people to get to the data. As I say, we're happy to help. So come and talk to us. I mean, sometimes we're busy, but we're trying to do our best. And you don't have to do this on your own. We don't want you to. There's a lot of the metadata. To me, it's a very simple process, but I'm used to all the terminology, and you might get lost onto, what's the difference between creator and what should I call it like that, or something else. But don't wait until you're ready, because a lot of publishing data is actually how you manage your data through all the way. So it's better to start up pretty much when you start your project. But, if you haven't done that, the earlier the better.
in any case. So that's it. We're coming down to what I think is the main tool to get your data published, and is having a plan about your data, how you're going to manage in general. So it's a bit like when you write a scientific paper, I guess you write about your research, you know, what was your idea, your hypothesis, how you developing, you know, the methods you use, and so on and so forth. With a data set, it's kind of similar. Rather than putting that in a journal, though sometimes you can do that as well now, you put that into a data management plan, and that's where you put your story. So we provide this tool called MP Online, which we stolen from the UK. So just to give you an idea, in the UK, actually everybody has to use these, and everybody has to submit, say, a management plan when they go, when they require a grant or similar things. We just modified it a little bit, and I got the right one. So anyone who is in, I kind of had to limit the people who could come into the tool, but I'm allowing anyone who's in the center to come in, but it's by email. So if you try to go there and sign in and you can't sign in, it might mean that you're relatively new and I haven't put you in yet. Or maybe you're trying to use a different email from your official uni, but don't panic. I will receive a warning by email, and I'll add your email straight on. So you can go here and start a new plan. Don't too much. Some of the thing doesn't really matter at the moment. I just left some of the stuff in because it might matter later on. And then you go here and create a plan. So what is just looking is just asking you this thing to choose different templates. At the moment, we just have one template. You can put some general information here, and I don't want to go too deeply into everything you need to do. I just want to say that we divided the document plan in 3 parts. So we got a basic DMP, which has basically these kind of questions. That's the minimum you would have, and that's where you should start. So you have to have an idea what your data it is, what you're gonna create, how it's going to be collected, put it together or created or whatever, and where you're going to store it, how you're going to back it up, where you're going to put your documentation about this data set, and do you want to share it? And if you share it, how are you going to share it? And finally, it goes on to the licensing. Normally, no one here has got ethics issues whatsoever. They're there. And the terms of statement on agreement. So the way you don't have to know all of this. So when you actually go here and trying to answer a question, let's say, for example, for the licensing, you get a default answer. So unless you have any particular issue, which will be potentially, say, if you collaborate with the bureau, or CSIRO, who might have their own agreements and their own, legal requirements. Mostly the copyright will belong to your own institution, to your own university, and you can use a Creative Commons license to share your data. So we'll look at that later. Actually, I had a slide about this. So the Creative Commons is just like open access, but you get an actual legal agreement, which is that has been written to work internationally, which is the reason. And you have like about 6 different flavors. If you want something else, you can just click here and put something different. Every question will have guidance, so you get an overview and you get more online resources to clarify what we're talking about. So I often suggest this even just to get an idea. This is why I say you can start straight on. It doesn't matter if you don't have all the answer, but you start getting an idea, or how
you know, which are the kind of thing you might have to think about it, and which are the resources in Australia or even internationally that you can use. So all things like ants and which kind of service provided, all the things we talked about before, GeoNectar or, you know, the RDA will be explained somewhere here. Then we have a technical DMP, which goes a bit more into detail if you want to add, and I think it's useful to have a bit more about the software and the actual data workflow and what you've been doing. I think that's particularly useful for you. You wouldn't necessarily put that into grant. But I think it's also good to think about it, because sometimes people come and say, oh, all of a sudden, oh, I need all this storage, or I need, you know, and it's always possible to find something in a solution, but it's kind of hard to find it, you know, will not notice whatsoever, and you might have to stop, you know, or reset your workflow in a different way. So it's good to think, oh, how much data I'm going to produce, and do I have all the software can actually access the data that I want to. Maybe you want to use 50 terabytes of data sets, which we need to download, and it's going to take some time. So it's good to have this as well. And we also have a session in which it's kind of good for us if you tell us which kind of model or data you use, or if there's anything else, because this is what we normally, for example, provide support with. And if you and lots of people not using these but using something different will be really good for our group to know. And then there is the other bit, which is the publishing one. So basically, when we publish, we use the information in the basic DMP and in the publishing DMP, put them together and extract the information that we need to create all these data management plan for NCI and that GeoNectar record and all the sort of thing that you need to then NCI say, okay, we approve this, you can have a DOI, we ask. And the same for the threads. You just don't chuck the data in there. They run it through lots of compliance and tools, and they make sure that all base service is going to work with them. Again, you have, you know, some questions which are already fill in if what you're going to do is, like, say, use ants and NCI GeoNetwork. But if you have different needs, then you can have them in there. And I think this is just really some other things like the dataset title or keywords and things that we need to complete your records. So I don't want to go on too long on this. All I want to show is then this is going to appear in your plans. And you can always edit them, obviously. You can share them with someone else. So a good thing you can do is go in here and put share, and then you put my email address in here. This is a bit annoying because it doesn't give you the person, it just gives you the email address. So you have to get the right email address, the one I'm using to. Or you can put an email address of one of your collaborators, and then when you can see, you can give them read-only, can be a corner, or can also edit. And the other thing you can do is to export it, and you can choose which bit you're going to export, and there are different options, PDF or text, XML, whatever. It won't look wonderful, for example, if you had to submit it to a grant, then you'll have some edit to do. But at least it means that every time you change that, you know, you got something you can start from. Yes?
What's the difference between clone and edit? Like,
sorry?
What are the different sort of authorities between giving a
corner and edit access? Yeah, good. I suppose corner might be able to completely delete it. It will act, you know, it will be someone who's got yeah, the full option, or say, you know, just want to delete this completely. So if you go back there, yeah, say,
Or actually, this is because I use my other account. I had 2 accounts just to do things differently. But this was shared with other people, then on the one, see this one, for example, this was just a test, and I share it with my other account. So because I can edit, but see, I can't export it. Well, I can export it, but I can't share it with someone else, and I can't delete it. So it's real ownership, you know, for the corner. There you go. The other thing, which has got not to do with publishing, is, just in case you don't know, is that you can request some extra storage for this tool as well. So if you want some extra storage on GData free, that's the HH5, there's all on our wiki. This is where you go through. And again, this is all you need to do. Just give us a name, who else might be accessing these, and a very simple, quick reason for your request, which shouldn't be, I'm running out of storage, because that's obvious, but something that tell us, okay, this is model data from this model, you know, and it's linked to this project. Eventually, if you have a data management plan, you can actually link to it. It's just something that allows us to manage the storage a bit more efficiently and check that people are staying in the limits and stuff. Right, so the important thing, which I didn't, oops, sorry, I wish I could just get back into presentation mode. I don't seem to have an option here, but okay. The important thing to remember is that we're not talking about your research, we're talking about your data, which hopefully won't look like that. But so sometimes it's okay to also write, you know, a little bit what's the research project, but you shouldn't just focus on that. So the main issue that I have with that, we sort of get information, but often then I have to get back to people to readdress some things, because I had, in some cases, people didn't tell me anything really about the data. They just told me what they were trying to calculate and things like that. So just a few tips is really like, this is about the data. We've got to remember that, and you don't have to read all this. But then once you keep that in mind, you can actually use the same principle you would use, or the same sort of tips you use when you write a paper. So I just randomly search on Google for tips when you're writing a scientific paper, and all of these can sort of apply to, I would say probably the most important central is use standard systems and conventions in this case. So just try to use a vocabulary which is as general as possible, and that people can go back and look at the convention if they are in doubt about the meaning. Because one of the things is that even more, like, and that's the other one, like people include using complicated jargon and blah, blah, even more than with a paper, you want people from other disciplines to be able to understand what your data is about. Because often it's people from other fields you wouldn't think that might be using your data. And that's really good for you, I think, because it might open, you might be, you know, someone who works in more on the physical aspects, and some biologists might want to use your data, and, you know, it might be different collaboration there as well. And especially don't forget your audience. So you have 3 kinds of audience. You're going to have a user, you're going to get annoyed pretty soon if you don't keep him into account. You have a data manager, which normally desperate to really struggling with the job, I would say. And then you have the web services, which is like things like threads and Genector and whatever, which need to work. So need to have the kind of right information to work. So my advice with the user, you have to think like you're creating a relationship of trust. So when you think back on what makes you decide to use some data, if you really have to trust it, you know, to base your research. You don't want to waste time. So, and the best way to do that is to be as clear as possible on the good things about your data, on the bad things about your data. No one is out there to judge you. They're going to be happy with whatever they get, but it's really, really important to understand. And things like, you know, I don't know how to cite these, and I don't know what license apply, can really put you off. So just think about what makes you choose a data set and trying to put that in. So yeah, be nice to your data manager. We had to take care of your data. Sometimes I don't remember after 2 months, we have so much stuff to do. So it's really important, you know, to be quite clear in your information, and especially even little things like, you know, keep your contacts updated so we can find you back and so on. It's a lot more difficult for us to publish something that needs a lot of tidying up, and don't make assumptions of what we know, what we don't know, because there's a lot of you, and you know, you can be fairly specialized. And well, we mostly have a scientific background. You know, we can't know everything or even remember what we used to know. And finally, the web services, they'll be rendering your data just if they can. So standards and conventions are really, really important here. This is the other example of threads going bad. So this is part of the weather at home. I don't know if any of you, I'm working on a separate threads catalog to show this data, and I spent 2 days banging my head and calling all the other data experts that thankfully I live in between these IMOs, all these software engineering things, and expert on NetCDF and everything. And we bang our head together to work out what was wrong with this. So this is, hopefully will open, yeah. So that's a NetCDF subset, and it kind of looks all right, although there are some few. This data was meant to be CF compliant, right? So it kind of looks all right. That's the service I told you before. You can select your fields, you got your stuff, and then you can select, say, subset or region, whatever. You can use this very complicated URL somewhere in a script, or you can just, this doesn't show very well, but because this is just a test server, or you can download it as NetCDF. Now, this is,
that's an aggregated data set.
Now this is one file, and this is an aggregated data set, which I did, correcting some things on the file. Now, you don't know if you noticed something. This is meant to be the same files, but just aggregated. There's many more variables. So what happened here is that this data set, it's incredibly, it's an output of the UN model, and has about 2 different kind of rotated grid, 6 vertical axes, something like that, right? So a couple of these vertical axes didn't have this tiny little attribute, right, which says I'm a height. You know, there was even the units were right in meter. That was the only mistake in all the CF, and that made disappear all this variable. It just couldn't find this variable. And I noticed because in one other file, all the axes were of that kind. And when I opened this, there was nothing. And I thought, because this was a test server, and I set it up myself, there was something wrong with what I was doing. I reinstalled everything and done. I went, you know, it was really awful. And then that was it. We went down to the Java thing to work out what was wrong. And that's what we discovered. It just couldn't recognize it. So they are unforgiving, and you don't want people. And I thought this is even better than the other one, because in the other one you will realize something is wrong, but there you wouldn't get anything. Also, this is a little bit, it's got proper variable names, and this, it's an example of how you can actually put all your simulation. In this case is 12-month simulations. So we put all the 12 months together, and then someone can access them all together, which is something we can do also at NCI. We haven't done that yet, but if you're interested. Right, so a lot of things can go wrong. So even if you don't understand why you have to put some information, it might be important to someone else. Then you're important too. So that's why we like still to publish through the RDA, because we can also talk about who you are, and you might be able to connect that record to other things you do. We suggest to keep track of everything. It's very difficult because, for example, I can create an RDA record for you, but you can't edit it. That's for limitation coming from ends and things, and I can't hand it over to you. But if you have an ORCID in your record, then people will always be able to find you. So ORCID is just like a DOI, but for a researcher, and I think probably much more people know what it is. Some people have a researcher ID, which is a different kind. We suggest ORCID because the ARC is looking at using them, allowing people to put them in a grant. So then when they had to choose if you've gone on with your work, they might see everything, your software, your data sets, all your paper, everything you've done, which is a better way, I think, even to, you know, potentially you could put that in your CV and people, you know, can just look at that. And especially if you're running model, I think you spend lots of years just doing that. You might have less papers than other people, but you actually done lots of useful work. And similarly, if you publish your data, so it's a good thing to have. So then we were talking about the open access. That was actually one of the other concerns that people is concerned about. Will my data be out there? Everybody will misuse it and do all sorts of things. But I would say there are different flavors, first of all, open access. And you can pretty much choose. So this is why we're using this license as well. So mostly you can ask people to attribute your data set to you. So if to use it, they have to give you credit. They can, you can let other people copy, distribute, display, perform, and modify your work, or you might decide, no, I don't want that. And then there is an option commercial or not commercial, and there is an option to let people create and publish, say, another data set originated from your data set or not. This means that your data is still public, is out there, but then people know what are the limits. And if you break it, you can do something about it. There's somewhere here, which I think on the website, which actually can guide you through this, ask you a few questions of what you might want to do or not do with your data, and then suggest a particular license. I think the one we suggest normally has attribution, share alike, and maybe non-commercial and not derivatives, which doesn't mean that someone can't use your data to publish other data, but they might have to contact you and, you know, discuss it with you, and then you can exempt them and give them permission on a case by case. So open access doesn't mean that people can just do completely whatever we want and disregard. And as I said, also lots of people is concerned about the data being misused, but if you're very, very clear on what your data is and what it's good for, then that shouldn't happen. Then this is the other question, what will happen when I leave? So if you publish your data with NCI, as long as you keep your contacts updated, nothing will happen, because NCI doesn't cancel your account straight on. In fact, they won't notice you're gone because you're not going away from NCI, you're just going away from another institution, until they might try to send you an email and they get, oh yeah, this email failed because your university account doesn't work. And that's the only moment in which they might occasionally decide to go and check if they should actually, you know, delete your account or not. But they tend not to, because in 2-3 years time, you might be back and need another one. So, and anything you publish in any case, but as a DOI or whatever, is going to stay there. What might happen in 5, 6, 7 years time is that we change the kind of services we're using, or the people around move. It's not going to be me working here maybe. And so you do need to have your contacts. So whoever is going to work on that can contact you and decide. No one's going to move your data without telling you, right? So that's sort of easy. Now, your institution, they have different systems, different publishing, different requirements, and often when you're leaving, it's a complication,
because everything goes through your university account, and that can get cancelled a lot more quickly. So I just put on the Wiki, and I'm just going to go through a very quick rundown of what each university provides, but all the information is on the Wiki, including if I found out what happens when you're leaving, because it's not always very clear. So UNSW has this RDS web portal. They require you to have a data management plan. It might not be a personal data management plan. For example, if you're a student, it might be a project. You might have a data management plan for your group, for example. That, you know, depends on working and if the data is shared or whatever. Your data management plan pretty much will have very similar question to our basic DMP and things, because everything ends up on the RDA record. So that's what they're going to do with your data management plan. They're going to create a record. So you really can, for example, use this system to create a data management plan to attach to a grant. So for things you're planning to do or for your own record, for that you can use the MP Online. But you know, you might have been required for data you actually produce. And then this is going to go in something which is called MediaFlux. I don't know if any of you have been trying to use it. There's a web interface, so you can use SFTP and other things. I've been helping Chris, I've been putting his stuff on it. It's not complicated. Mostly because it's a very powerful tool, but UNSW is using it in a very simple way. You dump your data there. It's part of your project. You can set up some of the you know, permissions and things, and that's it. When you move away, the person who actually is the main researcher will have power over that data, so to speak. Unfortunately, you can access it just with a university account. They don't create extra account. That's the only way they do now. So once you move, you might not be able to access the data. So save it somewhere else if it's small, or keep in good contact with the people who manage it, and they might be able to get you through, but you won't have an account anymore. Melbourne University, and this is the links which are somewhere else on all the UNSW data archive services. Melbourne University uses something called Figshare, which is also actually public, but they have their own, which is melbourne.figshare.com, and they have actually training course in 6 modules, which is called Managing Data in Melbourne, in which they'll explain everything, how it works. I can't probably there's a limit of 100 gigabyte on this one. I don't think there is such a limit at UNSW. But I suppose if you need more, then you can always contact them. Melbourne University also has other so-called e-research services. There's something called VicNode that people can contact to use actually the same system that UNSW use, MediaFlux, but set up in a completely different way, and very much more open. So all the links and all this kind of stuff is on the web. And Monash use Figshare as well. They don't have a training module or an online kind of form. What they have on that website is more checklist on how to do a data management plan. They also expect people to do that. And there's a different checklist for researcher and for students. I think the limit are even lower in the Monash Figshare, but you can easily ask for extra. There's another thing about this Figshare that goes through a university staff account, so potentially students might not be able to use it or not straight on. And I think at least in Monash, you can ask, your supervisor can ask for a staff account, so then you can access it. And you, again, when you leave, you know, you use your account. So I think there are some options, for example, to put we, at least with Monash, we clearly talk about a personal space on fixed share and a collaborative one. So it's better to always to use a collaborative one. So if you go away, that doesn't get deleted, just pass on to someone else. NU are what we call the NU data commons. So it was just showing there where you go in, and this also works. Sort of create a kind of data management plan. You go through an online form, which you have to fill to then get approval to be able to put in more detailed information on your data set, and then you get some storage once this gets approved too. And you obviously also use the NCI data services, and then they have a collaborative space I'm going to put in there, which is called Alliance, which doesn't allow you to load a lot, to upload a lot, but just more like figures, but it's a space where you can still share at least some kind of results. UTAS is still pretty much working on what they're going to do. At the moment, they have something called Vivo, which is to, again, create an RDA record, or, it's kind of guide you through that. IMAS is way more ahead, though, in itself, and most people at UTAS will be in IMAS. So they have their own data portal. And that actually, because that's very similar, so you see, you can get your data, submit your data. It's very similar to what the Australian ocean data, something else, and IMOS use, because it's basically, they just use the same portal, just a different one. So also other people, say from here or from you working on the ocean, might be able to publish the data through AODN as well. But normally, up to now, they've done mostly observations, but I think they're looking into putting also model. So these are all options you have, and then UTAS has another thread server, which is the one managed by TPAC. I think that's it, because that was our last slide. It's just to show that I've done my work. Any question? I kind of run through this a little bit fast, but also because I can't see if there is anyone from the various university, but it's all somewhere in here. So this is our wiki, which I hope you all know about. This is the data page, and there's a few different documents, which actually this was written by Andy, and then by me. And there's this section on how to publish data when submitting a paper. So there's a few guidelines what you should do in how to publish. So this goes a little bit, and I added an extra page which we also have through the induction, you can get to this data induction. So this is divided in 3 sections. So why should you manage your data? Consider nearly manage and publish quite kind of the same, and which data does this apply to? And then there's a section about the different tools, and another document about data management plans, what they are and how to use them and so on. So you should be able to find all that information, while the university are in the main data page. So if you go there, there's a little bit more here in the requirements and tools. And in this case, because Chris had some issues, which might be as well resolved now, but we had a lot more detailed troubleshooting. I can help you to a point, like in this case, I contact the person who was here. I mean, I'm still happy to do it, but often I don't have a university account, so it might be a bit indirect. But if you don't get help from the people who are supposed to, just let me know, even if it's your university.
Well, I have a data set and I want to publish it their way.
Yeah.
From this, I guess, first thing I need to do is to go to the idea online.
Yes.
Create a record there.
Yeah, you can share it with me.
Share it with you.
Oh, yeah, I should get an email where you share that, or just let me know by email or through Climate Help, whatever. That's what you want to do.
Yeah.
and then we will go from there. Basically, I extract all that information and put it onto the different NCI as an online form and things like that. And we're actually working now together. We just started working together with the other guys in the CMS to make that a lot more automatic too. So it speed up.
So does the data itself already have NCI?
If you want it on threads, yes. I mean, I guess the NCI is for data which is normally stored there. I don't think they will mind too much if it's somewhere else. But if it's somewhere else, we can still publish on RDA. It doesn't matter then where it is, which is what we used to do. In fact, that's how we started. So we can still put it there and then have a direct connection to wherever it is.
So if I put it at NCI in one of my projects and then publish it.
Yep.
Get a DOI.
Yep.
It's expected to stay there in that project.
No, because in the end, the DOI, I should explain that better, is just like what is technically called a handle. So it's just a URL which will always resolve onto something, which is why normally resolve onto a geonectar record or whatever, or a metadata record, because then if you change actually the location of the file, that makes it easier. But it doesn't matter where it resolve. Tomorrow I could go and say, oh no, I want to make it resolve straight onto threads or onto the RDA record instead of geonectar, and it doesn't matter. The DI will always stay the same, but the location can change as many times as you want.
Yeah, but there's implications for my storage I have it into.
Yeah.
If I want to keep this data essentially available forever in my project.
No, it wouldn't be in your project, sorry. We normally move it to UA8, so it will be explained over here.
Okay.
So it depends how big it is. So like in some cases, for example, for Nick Hanna, he had his own separate project. So it's a kind of, if you want to publish and share, then you get storage a lot easier because they see that as, a resource that other people can use. So if for his model output, for example, we create a separate thing, which is GH5, which is just on G data. So it's just storage.
So some data sets I'm going to continue adding to, they're going to keep growing.
Yep.
So can I have a DOI for a data set that's not complete?
You can. I wish anyone could answer that. So there's something they call about what we could do is a timestamp. It's just, I never really heard about a solution about that. I just hear this problem discussed all the time. Which is one reason why often this kind of data set don't get a DOI in the end. But it's something we'll have to do eventually because there's a lot of data sets like that. I mean, up to now, we kind of avoided it because, for example, we got the error intermediates like this, but, we don't do that because we're not the main producer, so we don't care if we don't put a DOI. But, all their analyses have the same issue. So I think that solution which is more commonly suggested is to put a timestamp, so you can say, okay, this is what it is at this stage. Or the other thing you could do is just to publish it in versions and say, okay, this is a bit like you do, a stable release of a software or whatever, and then you get a DOI for each version. In fact, normally you get a DOI for each version. The one example we have there was Wolf. I don't know if it's got one of these. I don't know. Just the catalog. No, that one. For example, for this one, we got two versions. Each one of them has got a different DOI. But I think in your case, if it's continuous, then it will be a timestamp or something like that. So you can say, this is this DOI, and then there is the date. It's not neat, but no one's got a solution yet. And it's difficult because that means that you don't really have a snapshot. You don't want to keep a snapshot. It is a really big data set or everything to say, okay, it's late. So I think the two solution is trying to decide at some stage for a version and then.
Yeah, so obviously the version being able to record it, so we have an ensemble and we're adding ensemble members to it.
Yep. So, but we could just do a DOI for each ensemble.
Yeah.
Benny began. Well, you can have a. Well, what you could have a main DOI for the collection, and then a kind of, and this DOI could point to the different DOI for the ensemble. So if someone uses just one ensemble, they can point straight on to that. But if someone uses all of them, they can use the main DOI. And put it again a timestamp so they know that it refers to this ensemble. So
if you've got DOI to an ensemble, you increase the ensemble size, change. Or...
If you increase the ensemble size menu, again, you have to use a timestamp of some sort. As I say, it's not solved. You won't believe how many, how many years since it's gone on and on this, and internationally. And it's a very slow process. It's the same thing for the software. But it's a very complicated thing from the software. They can't decide is like how you get, that particular instant of GitHub, that particular version, and linked to having a DOI for the software.
And what about what sort of data should be published? So say if I've done new model runs, that seems like an obvious one, but what about cases like if I've calculated something from CMIT5 data or something, that's fairly easy to reproduce with some code?
Yeah.
Should that be published as well?
Yeah, well, you always publish anything that underlines your figures, so any post-process data and stuff. So if you're talking about the software thing, or, I mean, you're talking about publishing the code or publishing the actual...
I've just calculated something from, say, CMIT5
yeah.
there for everyone. Should I then rather just publish my codes with the paper, or actually the final data set as well?
I think you might as well publish both of that. I mean, your final data set will be small in any case, so it wouldn't be an issue at all to publish it, and it will be more, in a way more correct. Also, take into account that the software might change, and in a couple of years' time, someone might get something completely different. So where you don't publish all the data is when you have a raw output model. You don't want to publish that. So there you really have to have, good documentation of the code and the configuration and stuff, and maybe, a subset of that, but you can't publish the whole thing. I mean, you really can literally put it on a web server, because it'll create an issue if everybody was doing that. It'll become unmanageable. But if it's a small, just go for it. It's like lots of these are really small data sets, and they hold the post-process kind of thing. And in theory, the people say you because you should reproduce, you should also sort of publish your input data. Often you can't do that. So what you just do is you just have to be very detailed about what data you've been using and stuff. And potentially we try to put, okay, I download the data from here, or use this particular version of this data, things like that.